Welcome to the Westminster tradition where we unpack lessons for the public service. I'm Alison Lloyd-Wright, Managing Director of the Good Trouble Group, and I'm joining you from Ghanaland. With me, as always, are my two fellow recovering public servants, Managing Director of Good Government Advisory, Danielle Elston.
Hello, Alison.
And Caroline Crozer-Barlow.
Hello, Alison.
This is our very first go at a new episode format, and which Caroline has prepared for us, drawing on real-life things that we've been in or seen others in, but nothing specifically that any of us have done. So it's kind of a hypothetical, but based on real-life scenarios. It's a bit of an experiment, and it comes from Caroline and I both being a bit too fond of a podcast called Normal Gossip, which we recommend to you. We'll link it in the show notes, and we've modelled this episode on that storytelling framework. So Caroline is going to lead us through a story that neither Danielle or I have any insight into what comes next. We are forbidden from scrolling ahead. So that's going
so
about as well
forbidden.
As you can imagine,
like we got it in the first text message.
Freaks.
Like,
so Caroline, take us away.
They don't even know how much more yellow highlighting and bold text there is declaring do not look at the next page. But anyway, so ladies, imagine yourself. You are an APS 6, ASO 7 project manager in a state infrastructure department. You've got a few members in your team, but it's a bit notional as to whether they're your team. There are a couple of experienced project managers at your level. You get on well with them. One of them is very experienced, maybe a bit cynical, and one has come from another part of the agency recently. You are responsible for a couple of bits of business. One is a grant program. It's a bit sleepy. It's about community infrastructure in areas of needs. It's usually allocated to local government to do capital projects. Your team recently finished doing its annual call for those grant applications and you're going through them. You've got a good spreadsheet. Usually, if the project is feasible, it's in the kind of budget allocation, it'll be funded if it's in like a area experience disadvantage. And even the kind of posher areas tend to get something over a kind of 5-year cycle because there's a recency of grant support criteria. You also do some stuff for a cross-government committee declaring Crown land surplus, which your director chairs. On the question of your director is lovely, but also anxious, neurotic, overachiever, cares a lot, but doesn't necessarily have all the things in her head. She waits to be told what's important from above and demands a lot of anxious rework when things are unclear. And the only other person at this point I think we need to meet is our DepSec, who has been newly promoted out of a central agency. She's even appeared on some like fancy public service podcast at one point. And people think she's a bit jumped up and overly responsive to the minister. This is our context setting. Do you guys have any questions you would like solved at this point in time?
So before we go to the like the culture and the up and down, sleepy grants program jumped out at me, and sounds like one of those things that it is usually an APS ASO 6, 7 who keeps running it year in and out. At some point there was a vision. At some point there was a political problem. It had like a very clear
But we've
purpose.
long lost the thread of that, and now we just keep doing it because we've always done it, and if we didn't, local councils would be mad.
Yeah, and so that feels familiar, but also I feel sorry for them immediately on the basis that like they're administering it, but they're not attached to any kind of like what the heck is this all for, which is one of the things that makes it hard to get out of bed in the morning if you don't know what it's all for.
One of the reasons why it is a sleepy grants program, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Danielle, is that it comes from a hypothecated revenue source. So it is funded via a contribution from a Planning Act thing. So your minister is the planning minister, and every time someone like does something that's, you know, not compliant with the open space or the native veg, a little bit of money gets tipped into the bucket, which is why yes, as you say, it's also very popular with various stakeholders, or like it's just kind of expected by stakeholders, but also like it hasn't been able to be subject to savings because it has to be kind of spent on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Any
what
other
I
questions?
was going to say is that I'm just already starting to feel a bit of sympathy for working for someone who is an anxious, neurotic overachiever who wants to impress people above but doesn't necessarily know what that looks like and demands a lot of anxious rework. I've always found that kind of inconsistency from above really challenging to negotiate. And I guess perhaps as you take us forward, we might see how that plays out in real life.
Yeah, and the waiting to be told in some work with various places in the last couple of months, the waiting to be told, when your boss is waiting to be told what's important and isn't feeding up what they think might be important, is so frustrating because you're so, like, I don't know, hamstrung.
It's not just frustrating, it's an abrogation of responsibility, I think.
Sure.
Public servants
Sure. I'm thinking of this ASO6 for them, though. For the
No, I know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For them,
but
it's
their boss should be trying harder to come up with what they think is important, as well as just waiting for that to come from on high.
Yeah. But nevertheless, that is the situation they're in. As Danielle says, they are the ASO6, and this is exactly their situation. It begins, as so many things do, on ABC morning radio. Someone calls in and talks about a leaking waste disposal station that they used when they were using a houseboat on the Murray during the week. Somehow this turns into everyone sharing the time they got injured on the river. People ring in to talk about jetties that spiked their feet with nails or rashes they got swimming near waste disposal stations. Someone calls in and says, "Why doesn't the government fix this?" And someone else calls in and blames local government. You happen to have a friend at the Environment and Water Department and you text your friend a poo emoji. They text you back a rolling on the floor laughing emoji, a skull and crossbones emoji, and a fish emoji. They're not super good at emojis, but you get the vibe. Your director in your weekly leadership team meeting that Monday morning asks, "Hey, I heard all this stuff on ABC as I was driving in. Is this a problem for us or for the department?" And your experienced/cynical colleague rolls his eyes and says, nah, mate, that's a problem for Environment and Water. They're the ones who do the poo stations and the jetties are a matter for the local government, nothing to do with us. And you share your joke about the poo emoji text that you shared with your friend. So let's just pause here. I wish you now to all just think, what might happen next? Does anything worry you about where we're at the moment?
Those emojis are going to be on the front page of the paper.
Yeah.
I'm so scared.
I share your fear, Danielle. I share your fear.
But isn't it the Environment and Water Department? It's like,
this?
why are you scared? Why are you scared? Why would you be scared? It's not your department.
Because we texted them and their FOIs will review our FOIs. You know what I mean. Their FOI request may release our text messages.
Which will be awful because somewhat ironically, there's a couple of things in what you said, Caroline. As the Westminster Tradition podcast's live media monitor, I am perennially
a role you perform
shocked.
Exceptionally well, Danielle.
Yep, we appreciate it.
You're welcome. Where I'm like, here, turn on this right now. This has got something to do with something you're doing, Caroline or Alison, because I do have ABC on from 5 till 9 every morning. The first thing I'm interested in is that this anxious director actually has been listening to that, because I'm perpetually shocked by the number of people that, unless she's got a text from the minister's office or something, that actually wait until they're told that something's in the media through some kind of monitoring report or whatever. So, I mean, yay, the director is on it at least. Yep. I'm also worried about what happens next with the not our problem. So not our problem today, but every problem for government is a problem for everyone in government, and where the pots of money might sit to fix it don't have to line up with a piece of legislation that says these bits sit with this department. And what might happen next? A central agency might go looking for a solution if this kicks off, and then they may go looking really broadly as to what bucket might be able to help solve it. And so I'm worried that they aren't getting ready to potentially be a part of this because the experienced colleagues like, nah, not my lane.
And
Well,
I mean, reflecting back on robo-debt as well as so many other things, like there's so much that can go wrong when people get really heavily into the not my job, not our problem take on the world, whether that's in sort of, you know, emergencies and disasters that they think, oh, well, that's just, there's a response agency and they're in charge of that. And they'll tell us if they need anything. And otherwise, we just continue our business as usual.
I'm loving this response, ladies. And it turns out that what happens next, you're welcome to go to the next page, is that your director is also a little bit of a smart egg. And while she's satisfied with the answer, it's not hers, she does say to you, could you just check, are there any jetties on that list in our community infrastructure projects grant? That's a good question. So look, you go back to your desk and you check it out and you provide an email to your director that says there is one jetty upgrade in our grant pile. And you note in your email that the assessment panel, of which you are chair, is very close to finalising the spreadsheet of recommendations for the minister's approval and will be putting it through this week. Hooray. What you don't mention in the email is that the jetty upgrade is on the to be approved list because the spreadsheet isn't finally approved. You're still waiting for a member of the panel who's been on sick leave to come back and sign it off. But you do walk into the director's office and just say, oh, look, by the way, I reckon that jetty upgrade, that's going to get funded. Anyway. So the story keeps going all week. The Premier finishes the week on ABC Radio saying, I take the lifeblood of our state, our river, very seriously. And everyone says, oh, yeah, that's a thing. And then on Monday, your minister goes on radio and is asked about river infrastructure because, of course, she has the unfortunate word infrastructure in her job title. And she says, look, it's very critical to the state. And actually, I had a chat with the Premier over the weekend and he's asked me to work closely with my water colleague to find a way through. On Monday, you hear on the grapevine that the boat licensing people in your agency and the local government people in your agency are all being dragged into meetings about solutions. All right, we're going to have a pause here. What does any of this make you think? What risks can you identify about where we are now?
I wish the spreadsheet was either finished or just about to start. I hate the timing of it.
What makes you anxious about that, Danielle?
Well, so they've done a process, and like pull me up if I'm not listening closely enough because I'm thinking different things each time you say anything. But they've run a process which presumably, God hope us, had some kind of criteria. It went out. A bunch of people sat around with a weighted something or other and filled it out. So there's some documentation.
They did.
Even though it's a sleepy program, it presumably does have a form of criteria that these have all been assessed against. Which
Very
by
happy
the sounds
to say
of
they
it's
have.
probably pretty consistent over a long period of time, that criteria, because it's sleepy. So it's not like they've been changed every 5 minutes before now. Mm-hmm. So what I'm worried about is I'm wishing that they were either just opening the grant round now and could legitimately put a set of criteria up to ministers or whatever the right process is to perhaps make it more easier to do a jet, like for jetties to be more of a focus or to put a criteria in, or that thing had been signed off last week and there was nothing you can do about it. But I hate the fact they've run the process and I feel the politics is about to bleed into something that's 90% done.
Mm-hmm. So I have a related but slightly different take, which is there is a competitive process underway which had criteria, it has closed, it is being assessed. It's unclear to me, Caroline, from your description, whether the panel decides or whether the panel makes recommendations for the minister to decide, because I think
makes recommendations for the minister, to be clear, makes recommendations for the minister.
Which would make it open for the minister to decide different than what they are recommended, so long as they are brave and comfortable in owning why they have done that. A document. The second thing, though, is presumably, and I'm making an assumption here, and we know what they say about assumptions, presumably this competitive round isn't the only opportunity to spend out of this hypothecated fund, and there may be an opportunity to create a specific river infrastructure round or something. Don't know. That's where I'm at.
But you are the ASO 6th. What are you doing at this point? Are you just continuing to prepare your brief? Is there anything different that you're doing at this point?
I mean, I was pretty precocious and annoying. So there is a chance that I'm at the very least going to the anxious director and saying, there's a few options available here that we might not be aware of. Do you want to call the minister's office about them? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I would, be attempting to float something up the chain, but it is not my responsibility actually, and I am not a decision maker on this.
No.
particular
I didn't
issue.
mean that, but floating, yeah.
Floating.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will move to the next page and see what we actually did. Because actually, you just sent the brief up as it was. And it's been sitting in the minister's office since it went up for 3 weeks, but it hasn't come back. And look, the media is still running stories about a lack of care of our lifeblood infrastructure on the river. And you get a call from your LGA colleague who is trying to follow up on what's happening with this grants round, and you explain, look, it's all still pending. They're not happy, and you get a sense they're going to escalate on their side. Later that week, your director is called into a meeting with the executive director and the DepSec. She comes back out and asks you into her office, and she says, look, we have to fund the river waste disposal stations out of this grant round, and she hands back the brief that's been sent up. You're shocked. You thought maybe some jetties might be a priority for a future round, but you hadn't imagined like poo station maintenance. You go out and you say to your experienced colleague, I don't really understand what I'm supposed to do with this. And your colleague, who is obviously having a bad day, says, oh, that's bullshit. The Act forbids this being asked of you. It's actually, like, frankly corrupt that they're asking you to intervene in this process at the moment. So let's take a little pause here. What do we do at this point in time?
This is so awful for this project manager, policy officer person. She's obviously come back. I'm interested in the process here because this is what will end up they'll all end up having to defend, which is did it go up in like the correspondence system and has it now been pulled out and returned? Has there been a note from a minister's office added in there? Like the directors come back in from what you said and said we're funding poo stations, but where is any of that written down is one of my
I can answer your question on this.
Excellent.
So the brief has been formally returned from the minister's office to the department, both in the electronic record and in the hard copy file you're holding, unsigned and without any commentary on it. It's just
No
been handed
markups.
back. No markups at all, just handed back.
So I, like Danielle, would want to know whose decision it is that we are funding poo stations, and preferably in writing. I guess the ways to do that are maybe via an email to your director or in the minute that you are preparing now to approve the funding of poo stations. In the background, I would say, we went through this process and these were the recommendations, and on date it was returned, and instructions.
But hang on. Can I hang on? So
I'd want to read the Act and check that this is actually plausible. Let's pause there for a second.
So, and like I'm going to take a punt and make an assumption that it's some broad infrastructure for community, and so that I would definitely check the Act, but also let's assume going forward that it gives you these kind of the minister these broad parameters. I'm assuming also that the bucket stays the same size. So every poo station that is funded is taking away like some tiny council who spent all this time putting together this grant application for this shovel-ready
I'm assuming
project.
the poo stations didn't apply either.
No, because they're state government infrastructure, worth saying. They're a state government asset.
So they're not actually eligible for the competitive.
I mean, that would be
round?
if you could go to Crown, again, I hadn't picked that bit up. If you can go back to the Act and get advice that actually, I mean, that's a cleaner answer, which is, we would love to, Minister, and there's a specific legal reason we cannot fund state government infrastructure, because that's cleaner than this process is dodgy and yet it's still up to you where the money goes. So that would be a clean solution for them.
I agree. First step, let's get some Crown advice. But if the Crown advice is that it's the minister's fund and the minister can do whatever the minister wants with the minister's fund, then I think...
Well, what if...
Go on.
Well, what if Crown instead say to you, yep, very happy to provide you with some advice. It's an 8-week backlog for the provision of Crown advice. No?
Well, so some of this is going to be about managing the anxious director, right? So the other thing, if we go back to this, is sometimes neurotic, anxious leaders are worried about the wrong things. And so what the director is worried about here, program manager, is they are worried about saying no to a minister. They're worried about not making the secretary happy. Someone's asked them to solve a front page story. They do have a bucket of money, like genuinely, and what this director isn't anxious about is the process, whether it's correct or accurate. So look, managing up to that person is really difficult, and one of the things you have to do is not buy into some of their crazy, and that's really hard. So I'm not, those who can do, those who can't teach and make podcasts, and that's fine. But I would definitely be sitting that director down and saying, and one of the techniques is to name feelings. And if someone had told me this 20 years ago, I would have been like, girly, fluffy, no way, go away. But I'd be like, I know you're anxious about, I can see that you are anxious about us looking like we're blockers, not being able to solve this problem for across government, list. I am wondering if you are anxious about these 5 things, because I am.
Oh, I like that, what you did there. Yeah. Like, I'm wondering if you're anxious about these clever things I'm also anxious about. That was good.
And I'm wondering what you are suggesting we do insofar as documenting all of this, because the thing is, it's the pen to paper that really puts the rubber to the road, right? So someone has to type something, and then depending on what they suggest, I think some of it could also be, I appreciate that we need to support government, blah, blah, blah. I do feel like this carries a level of risk, director, that maybe you should run this grant round and I should support you instead of me finalising it. Because firstly, that puts the pen back in their hand and like the risk then starts to sit with them, which might change their thoughts and view on it. Like, don't be surly or just be like, this is not the normal way I run a grant round and I'm not very experienced at when it becomes a bit political. So I could help you out, but perhaps you will need to be the one who assesses which poo station and writes it up. Because at the end of the day, if you are thinking backwards from your Royal Commission or your Senate estimates or whatever your public inquiry is, whose name is at the bottom of that grant round brief is going to be really, really important. But if other people want to carry that risk, you don't have to be like the sour Sally wandering around the place.
Or like your peer saying this is bullshit and that's corrupt, right? Like, remember that has been said into the workplace, which is...
I mean, I would also maybe just keep myself a personal memo of these interactions as well, to the extent that they're not recorded, which has always been my habit when I felt a bit squiffy about something that I was being asked to do, just so that I had a contemporaneous record I could reflect back on if ever needed, to say, at this time, this happened, and this is what I was told.
Can I ask you, Alison, a practical question? I've always made those file notes as emails to myself because I figure it like has a nice date on it and then it's like a thing. How do you make your file notes of these tricky things?
I actually usually write them by hand into a little personal notebook. I know, but I do love a notebook.
She does. And she has handwriting she doesn't need to be embarrassed about. One of the things one of you said I actually really want to call out as a thing I would definitely not do, which was, you said confirm the direction in writing with an email to the boss. And I feel like that might be a third stage step, but it's definitely not the first thing I would do.
Not right now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Bit snookery, might get everyone's backs up.
That's what I feel.
Is it my conversation followed by Alison's email? Because also my conversation might not work and they might go, I'm not writing it. It's your job and we're doing poo stations now. Go away. That's at that point.
At that point. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yes, I accept.
Yeah. And to say out loud the bit, it might feel like snookery because it might feel like you're setting up an FOI for the future or like a piece of paper for the future. So like just to kind of say out loud for our listeners, that's kind of where that is. All right. We are free to go to the next page.
And if they're not comfortable with it being in writing, maybe they shouldn't issue the direction. Anyway.
Look, so what actually happens in this particular context?
I know you're both right, is that you actually talk it out like humans.
Someone's in a mood.
Beforehand. Yep. Yes,
well,
someone.
You might have misunderstood
someone's a bit
the
worse
direction.
for wear today.
All right.
Anyway.
So you get to work. What actually happens is it turns out you listen to a podcast called The Westminster Tradition, and it's taught you to look closely at the legislative basis of the allocation of your funding, as well as various Treasury and Finance circulars around the operation of the grants process. And so you start drafting a brief on the options of this particular grant round. You work around the clock for 4 days with your director breathing down your neck. And when it's finally finished, you have 2 options. Option 1, it is actually legally possible to just not complete this grant round, allocate no funding out of it. And you could issue a new grant round with new criteria that could include emphasis on the things we're talking about, river cleanliness. And you've even done the hard work of talking to your environment colleagues who've told you kind of how much a poo station costs, and you're kind of like, yeah, we could probably do this, wouldn't leave a lot of money for other applicants. So that's option 1, kill the current grant round, reissue with a new criteria. Option 2, you write down, is you could just progress this round as it is, and next year's round could have the amended criteria. So you could announce next year we're going to do that with the amended criteria. Again, because you listen to this podcast, you've got a really good section on risks for each of the options. You've talked about stakeholders who might be impacted by both of those things, timelines for delivery, managing compliance with the various Treasurer's instructions. You provide the draft to your director prior to them finalising to put up the chain. What do you think happens next?
They are really comfortable with a proper process and the slippage in time that will be required to not allocate out of this funding round and run a new one. And they put out really clear legal guidance for the funding round to be focused on poo stations, and everyone's happy. Is that it, Caroline? Got it?
I mean, they obviously choose option 1.
No. I want you to think literally you've handed this brief to your director. It's been a massive hurry. You're under extreme pressure. It's 4 days of like intense work and da-da-da-da-da. What happens next?
Hurry up and wait. Is that the game? Yep. Is that the game? Is because, and I swear to God, we have not been allowed. There are so many highlighted texts in this, listeners.
Yeah. Which we are following so well.
I'm very impressed. Thank you.
So it's been given to this neurotic person who is actually probably not good at making decisions because they want to always please upwards. And you've given them a tidy, neither of these 2 things are perfect either, because there's still money that won't go to the community infrastructure, but it's all tidy and legal and transparent with public money. And neither of those options is the one that director wants to go, don't worry, we fixed it. And because they perhaps don't have all the pieces in their head, they just don't know what to do with that. And so I'm going to say that the game is, after breathing down your neck for an option, the director gets the paper and then is just prone with, but neither of these are the right answer or the one I wanted, and does nothing.
Okay, scroll down to the next page and literally it's 2 weeks later and your director is still sitting on the brief. Thank you. You've been asked to take out all the risks. You've asked to put them back in and many more. You've been asked to revisit the timelines of a reissued round many times. During this 2 weeks, your LGA contact has called in to check in again and you're like, still waiting. And they say, well, at least that jetty got funded. And you're shocked and a bit unsure about how they might know that, but you just kind of move on, right? Eventually, later that week, you hear that the minister's office has gone bananas and demanded the brief, and as a result, it gets pushed as far as the DepSec. The DepSec calls you in and asks all the same questions as your anxious director and some new ones. Why can't you just add the poo stations into the current grant round? Or why can't you bring a new grant round forward from next year to this year so we can do both?
That was a question I had. Do they have to be annual? Yeah.
Love this.
Ask Treasury to bring it forward.
Exactly. You're not sure about any of these things. And because, again, you listen to the Westminster tradition, you say, I'm not 100% sure. Can I go find that out? And your DepSec says, excellent. I love it when someone says they're not 100% sure and they're going to find that out, but go find it out quickly. And so you go off. Your peers suggest calling Treasury to see if you can bring the funding round forward. And Treasury officials say, what do they say? No, not without a budget submission. Your read of the Treasurer's instructions around the grant process is pretty clear. You can't just add new recommendations into it that weren't into the original process. However, after some inspired thinking, you add in an option 3. Anyone got some ideas about option 3?
Mate, I'm way too dusty. Creative thinking about grant rounds. Holy moly.
I was thinking, like, does it say annually? Like, why can't you pull it forward? And so now you've ruined my thinking, because I was like, that's option 3. The solution is.
That's what I thought option 3 was as well. Do both.
Good option. Sadly, no.
What's that taco girl? You know?
I also.
Why can't we have both?
Why can't we have both?
I also think, though, that the interesting thing here is the DepSec calls the program manager in.
Uh-huh.
So where's the director who's been put more risks, take them out, put more risks, take them out, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the program officers had to kind of go in without a shield. I mean, it turns out the DepSec sounds like they're quite measured and quite excellent. And just had some more ideas. Like, I don't think we've covered everything. Isn't there something else? And can you go find out these ideas quickly? But again, I'm like, where's the director? Why aren't they covering shield for this much more junior person who you are asking to do a degree of creative, and I don't mean creative in a dodgy way, but like there's often another way.
Innovative, yeah.
I don't know what option 3 is.
Damn it,
I'm going to fail the exam.
We always want the junior person in the room. So, like, the objection is that you think the director is not there. But, like, I would want the program manager in the room if I was the DepSec, because actually I want the person who knows the content. Right, yeah, okay. It's just that the director isn't there, is your
worry. Oh, no, I always want the content person. I just think the director, and I'm actually surprised that with an anxious director, as described, they didn't just go on their own and leave
just
the program
elbow their way in.
Just agree to whatever.
It puts the junior person in an awkward position if they then receive instructions from the DepSec that they have to sell into their director. It's challenging.
Excellent points to watch out for. So any advice for if you have gone on your own, any advice for how to feed this back to your director?
I'd be popping my head in the office and saying...
Oh, you were going verbal, and this time I was going, given how sticky this is getting, I'd be inclined for an email that's like, look, just met with so-and-so. There's a few, I mean, I wouldn't again, snooker anyone, but it would be like they've asked for a bit more on this and a bit more on that. I'm going to need to pull in some of the people around us to do it. If you have any additional direction when you get out of your next meeting, please come and tell me or whatever. Alison went the informal option.
Yeah, I think either of those are fine, right?
Yeah. I don't think we were asked to do anything by the DepSec that was unexpected.
Yeah. And maybe it's a read on how anxious and neurotic your director is, right? Like there are some directors who would take that email as a kind of undermining power move, and there are some who would take it as just like, excellent, keeping me in touch. So you'd probably want to know what the kind of particular crazy of your director is. Yeah. Okay. Look, you can move forward to option 3. Let me tell you what option 3 is.
What was the answer, Caroline?
Look, it might be possible to proceed with the current grant round, but only grant a smaller amount of the money, leaving the rest of the money unspent, and then, subject to legal advice, but from your read of the Act, actually the minister can just make a direct determination about funding poo station upgrades, right? So you don't have time for that formal legal advice, to be clear, but from your read of the grants administration perspective and your read of the Act, actually it seems like it could probably be an okay third option. The director is very anxious about this option being included. What if it can't be delivered? We'll have got their hopes up. And no matter how many words you put in, like a further option to explore or something we could do more work on, nothing kind of makes her happy.
Yeah. Further advice needed, but yeah.
So this hold up leads to the DepSec senior advisor calling you directly and asking you why your brief is taking so long. You tactfully explain as best that you can that your director is still thinking about...
This person has so much patience, right? Like at this point, when you said tactfully, I was like,
yeah, I thought I'd just be like, my director's still got it.
I've been running out of tact at this point, internally.
You tactfully explain as best that you can that your director is still thinking about the questions raised, and an hour later, you and your director are summoned to the office of the Deputy Secretary and asked to bring the latest draft of the brief. Deputy Secretary agrees to put in option 3 with the good caveat language and signs the brief directly through to the Minister's office. All right, we're nearly there. This is the second to last pause. What do we think happens next? What do you do while you're waiting for that briefing to come back? What are you worried about?
Well, you still go and get the legal advice because there's plenty of time if it's sitting in the process to just pull it out and update it without slowing it down.
Love that.
So you would still have put your request for legal advice in, and hopefully you'd be on the phone to your allocated CSO saying, even if you haven't finished, is it likely I should pull this? Like, I know you've only just started, but what's your early sense?
Well, that's very good.
Like, and we can always put it back in, but if you're getting an early sense that I'm like, my bush lawyering is completely wrong, then I may want to pull it out and ground zero this again. So while you're waiting, I would still be doing a deeper dive, particularly what we haven't heard is what's going on in the outside world. So one of the things I don't know is whether there's this perpetual pressure or whether they're now just still like, because
moved on to something else.
Fixing it. But the Premier said they're fixing it. So you still have to fix it because at some point someone will come back and check, so to speak. But
can I give you an update on what's going on in the outside world? So let's just say the political pressure has not eased.
Right.
I guess
that's
in that
helpful
context,
information.
I'd also be thinking about noting that you put up 3 options. Each of them have kind of quite different communications requirements to stakeholders, and you're going to be asked to, once a decision has been made, either explain to people in the first round that they're no longer getting funding, even though they did all the right things and applied correctly, or some other combination of things. And I'd want to start kind of de-risking the public-facing part of what happens once they make a decision on these options.
I also wouldn't want to be answering the phone because anyone who's run a grant round, particularly if they've given any indications of timelines, is now being inundated by grant applicants asking them, but what's going on? So that would be the other really stressful part of this, which would be the constant inquiries from the original people who 6 months ago put their thing in.
And I guess what I would want to know about one of those options is it that we're giving fewer of those original people some grant money in order to squeeze in the poo stations, or are we giving all of them some but less than they asked for? Which is...
The first is the proposal. Of course, they could ask for a different proposal, but the first is you just draw the line higher.
Draw the line higher. Yep, okay.
Okay, so we're continuing getting our Crown advice and we're continuing doing comms planning for all 3 scenarios. We're avoiding kind of direct engagement with the stakeholders as much as is kind of tactfully and appropriately possible because we don't want to kind of, feed the expectation beast. Anything else? That sounds like a pretty good plan to me.
Yeah. Look, if your director still is leaving you handling this on your own, you're also applying for other jobs. But keep going.
I love that. Okay. All right. Look, here's our final update. Word on the street is the Minister's Chief of Staff goes nuts when the brief reaches him. He hates option 1, kill the grant round and reissue, because he's aghast at the length of list of people that he's annoying if they hold the grant round up. And it seems he's particularly worried because apparently one council already knows to expect jetty funding.
How? But yeah.
Oh, does anyone remember how they might know? Do you remember? Oh,
No.
I'll tell you at the end. All right. He hates option 2, do it next year because it doesn't solve the immediate problem. And he hates option 3, do part of this grant round and then make a determination for the rest, because lots of the preferred projects, including the jetty, are below the grant line for the smaller grant round this year. So the brief stays in limbo. Comms about the grant round goes out, staying still waiting, and you are 1 week, 2 week, just waiting for a decision. Then the media starts reporting a story that the minister's office has been intervening in a grant application process. And on that day, you get a call from the MLO asking if the spreadsheet attached to the original brief should be used to generate the letters to successful grant applicants. And they're just going with the very first brief and issuing the grants as they were. Final
Wild.
call. Can anyone explain what has happened here?
Oh, well, firstly, we've done a whole heap of work for alternatives. Like this is the thing that the public finds bananas about us, which is you've done all that thinking to try and find legal, transparent, ethical options that meet the politics of the day but are also good. And I still feel like all of this, they hate option 1, 2, and 3, whatever else is like, no, like there was no sitting down to kind of talk them through, or like, it's just what I'm hearing is it just sat up there. And then I suspect there were other conversations that happened that you, as the person who was supposed to acquit this stuff and send out those letters, have happened. Like there's been all these other flurries up the top that you will never find out about. Your director's MIA. And you have no idea how you've landed on this thing that you are technically a bit responsible. I mean, they're responsible for deciding it's a ministerial grant round, but like you are the one who's going to have to answer phone calls, etc. I can't figure out what's happened. Alison?
I think what has happened is that they consider the risk of being seen to interfere in the grant process is greater than the risk of not dealing with the poo stations in a kind of media and political parliamentary context.
So the external pressure changed.
Yeah. And I guess it's interesting because they do have some ability. They're the decision maker. The minister is the decision maker on the grants, but not necessarily, and would have signed off on the guidelines and criteria before they were issued and had various people with jetties apply for them. So I think maybe that like when push came to shove, they realised that the risk of looking sketchy was worse.
Yeah.
That's what I hope anyway.
Yep, I think that's right. Like I haven't written the end of this scenario, but it feels to me like they were like, oh my God, we were trying to solve this problem. It was never really our problem. And in trying to solve it, we were about to create a much bigger problem. So, yep.
There is a problem in here generally, which is ministerial grant rounds, which is this thing where the media was saying the minister's office were intervening in a grant application process. When they are ministerial ones, there are different types of grants, but my understanding from the beginning of this was that it was one of the ones the ministers decide, not the one that panels or whatever. And so to help the minister out, we create process underneath so that they are not determining, so just because of the size of an office and time and all of that kind of thing. So part of it is this sleepy grants program. If we go back to the very beginning, it's like, what's the framing? Do they even is the comms at the beginning to applicants clear that it's like the minister can have a captain's pick, like it is their decision, and that the public service is just pulling together the applications and a bit of advice. I don't think when people are applying for grants, it's often very clear what some of those, like, in fact, it's almost never clear who is the deciding factor. So I think one of the things that if I was this person heading into next year, so we've done all of this flurry and we're now crying into our Friday night wine or whatever because we're like, I cannot believe how anxious I was in order for the work I did 8 weeks ago just to get signed off as was originally whatever. Whilst I was being left to, because my boss was too scared to upset anyone or give any advice or be frank and fearless. So I was just left to kind of constantly make decisions and changes. So if you were to stick around, I would now be going, okay, so I think this actual grant program should not be sleepy anymore. It needs a clear outcomes, clear like it, and so that and maybe that clear outcome when you've consulted up and down the chain is that there are less criteria and they don't go up weighted and ministers can pick and choose. Like these are all the things that are available, but I would be
or one bucket that's
it.
competitive and one bucket that's discretionary.
Yep. Government priorities.
Yeah.
Before next year, I would be having a look at the whole thing and then putting advice to the director who presumably based on this advice will just then put it in a drawer because it sounds hard, about how you can effectively make the program so that if it's an old program, it needs to be agile and nimble for changing external circumstances. The process needs to be clear and who makes the decision needs to be clear.
Yeah, I have a slide called Whose Decision Is It?, which is about saying at all points and in all things we do, it's really useful to be abundantly clear about who gets to decide the thing. So are you being told something for information, but someone else is making the decision? Are you expected to make the decision? What risks come with you making a decision that is different than the one that you are being recommended to make? It's open to you to do so, but not without risk.
So, Danielle, you're very harsh on the director. I feel like they didn't do anything particularly terrible in this. Like they were kind of annoying and sat on a brief for a couple of weeks.
Just a bit of a shit.
Like that's just
it could be your
director behaviour.
Could be being harsh on you and your drafting. Who knows? But like they don't reappear very often, I suppose. And I think this is one of those challenges of both line management and leadership, which is like once you get to the bit where Min's office goes nuts, DepSec's calling me and whatever else, director and above need to be right beside you the whole time. Like it's fine for BAU, but I think for some people these kinds of things are career making. I think for all of us, those kind of not this one, but all of the ones.
No. But something like this, where you solved it.
Reasonably good at judgment and that kind of thing. For some people, it's just beyond terrifying. And they will be awake all night. They will be like...
And it's way above what we're paying them to take responsibility for.
So that's why I'm hard on the director, partly because there's nothing in the drafting that says that they are providing good guidance or prepared to make a tough call that they are paid for. And they're not sticking with this person from the way you've described it, where it's not like they're going through it at the end of the day and saying you've made heaps of progress. Okay, option 3, like as many as we can pull together would be great. Thank you. That's really creative.
Yeah.
It sounds like they've delegated all the ick to the program manager to me.
I had a similar director once who used to, in a very similar, not entirely the same scenario, just send back every briefing, and I was told to be more strategic, and I was like, but I don't what
that is not advice.
What do you actually want from me?
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, the only thing worse than that is like a direction that's like whatever it is, everyone needs to be happy.
Yes. Which is clearly the underwriting direction here.
And it's this is the challenge. And I think, that this is the challenge of everyone needs to be happy. It's like, well, there's one bucket, guys.
Yeah.
So who do we want to be happy the most?
So what things stood out to you as our hero of the story doing things really well, and what things stood out to you as problematic, not just in our hero, but like just in the story in general?
I enjoyed option 3, and I enjoyed our hero getting legal advice. Like there is always usually more than just a couple of ways to solve the problem. What stood out to me as problematic is the minister's office going bananas at various points outside our hero's control. Because ideally you might have not our hero, but our secretary, or at least the DepSec, might have had a conversation with the minister's office before we went to so much energy and effort to draft up all 3 options that they didn't like any of, and we're going to pretend that the document we sent it on didn't even exist.
Yep.
Yeah, this is the problem with secretaries or DepSecs being in ministers' meetings, going through long lists and getting a one-line set of direction at that point. I need you to solve this and all of that. I mean, like that's not wrong with the minister's office on the basis that you can easily come back and say we can't or whatever. But they're like, I don't like it, try something else.
Yep.
But at no point is anyone except for this lovely program manager, like there's nothing else there. There's no direction and there's no need. It's just not that, don't quite like it, try again. So I love their attempt to constantly find new options and going to get the legal advice. But far too often it is this person who is trying to find legal solutions that don't annoy anybody in a way that I struggle to believe that the people above them could do. Like,
Agreed.
If there was a no losers scenario, don't you think the minister's office would have figured that out and just said do it that way?
Yep. And just to fill you in on how did the minister's office and indeed the local government association person know that there was a recommended jetty in it, if we go right back to the beginning, if you recall, your director asked you, are there any jetties on the list?
And we said there were.
We said there were. And we didn't put in writing that one of them was going to get up, but you did stop by their door and just say, oh, yeah, by the way, I reckon it looks like it's going to get up. And I think this is a trap for young players that's worth calling out, that definitely that kind of informal intel passes really quickly. And sometimes it's very useful, but if it passes without the context that it's definitely not decided and it's definitely just a kind of sense, then remember once it hits an MLO or a minister's office. Yeah, trap for young players on that one, I reckon.
Yeah, 100%.
This was our first episode in this kind of scenario format, so we welcome any feedback from you on whether you liked it, didn't like it, and what you think we got right and wrong. We're very excited to announce that our mug winner this week is the Honourable John Gardner MP, who referenced the podcast in one of his valedictory speeches to the House. He was a very good minister to work with, and we very much appreciate his support. Till next time.
Just some appropriately bureaucratic disclaimers. While we've tried to be as thorough in our research as busy full-time jobs and lives allow, we definitely don't guarantee that we've got all the details right. Please feel free to email us corrections, episode suggestions or anything else at thewestminstertraditionpod@gmail.com. Thanks to Pampot Audio for our intro and outro music. Till next time.